Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this edition of Crunch Time here on ASTV Productions. I'm your host, Joe Hamilton, along with Theo. Theo, how you doing, man?
Well, I'm a little sore. That's all I'm gonna say. And I'm sore because not mentally, not emotionally, but physically, because I have never made a bracket that bad in my life. I am probably along with a lot of other people. This bracket making was an absolute travesty. It was a sham. It was a mockery. It was a Traversham mockery. And I did terrible. Charles Barkley, TRBL, terrible. I
Yeah,
almost did as bad as Chuck spilling his drink during halftime last night? Did you see that?
I didn't see that.
He put his whole fist in his mug and he spilled his Diet Coke all over him. I think it was more whiskey than anything, but poor guy had whiskey all over his lap and they're just making fun of him, poking fun out of him. Poor Charles. I mean, it was cute, but he was like, get me off set now.
Yeah, I don't think it was whiskey, at least I hope, because he was on national TV. So I don't know if you'd want to have whiskey in your.
I'm not gonna say it was probably Diet Coke, but I'm just saying there was ice cubes and liquid all over the desk. He was not happy.
Yeah, he was not happy. I wouldn't be happy either. I mean, would you be happy with that?
I mean, not with that. I mean, it's just funny because you got him and Kenny on one side, and you got Casey and the other guy on the left. And you're like, okay, they want Charles to say a lot about college ball, and he said some fun stuff this week. I mean, if you want to check what he says, have a listen to halftime. Don't change your dial on the television. Listen to what Charles has got to say because it might surprise you the way he thinks and philosophizes. I don't know if that's an English word, but I just did it. With what goes on with college ball. I mean, he talks about, the whole hashtag I'm not NCAA property, to the hashtag education, to the hashtag enjoy your 4 years, to the hashtag of be a student, to the hashtag of go get some. I mean, the list goes on and on. I mean, Charles Barkley will be the first one to tell you that students are getting a full ride education. You cannot take that away from a student for 4 years. If you're a one and done student and you want to make it to the big shows, great. But you know what? Unless you're one of those 0.2% that goes all the way to the bigs and the 2% that does play a little bit, the 98% of other basketball players would rather rely on a 4-year education and have something that's successful for the rest of their life. I'm just saying, I'm getting off my soapbox. I'm done.
Hey, Theo, it's fine, dude. You can go there. Speaking of this tournament,
I'll probably go there again. So yeah, it's going to be an hour. Just grab your popcorn, right?
Think of let's talk about this tournament. First of all, have you ever seen this many upsets this early?
You know what? It just goes to show you that it's March Madness. It's not March. It's madness. And can you consider the trends that have happened in the first 5 days of this tournament? I cannot recall the difference in storylines. I mean, here we are talking about Big Ten basketball. 9 teams or 10 teams from the Big Ten. Utter dominance. They're supposed to be the talk of the town. Who's left? Michigan. Illinois is gone. Michigan State didn't even whisper. Maryland, bye. Rutgers is gone. I mean, Ohio State, goodbye in the first round. I mean, you've got Michigan left. They're carrying the crew. Badgers are done. And the Pac-12 absolutely surprises me because they're undefeated still. I mean, there's 1 game left. And the fact that Oregon, who was not even supposed to be in the tournament, has won 2 in a row. It just goes to show you hot basketball is hot basketball at the right time of the year. And I picked Florida State to go far. I picked Michigan to go far. Who else did I have in my bracket? Gonzaga. And I had one more. I forget. Baylor, I think. So I'm still doing okay for the Final Four. Whether or not I finish 20 out of 20 on the Final Four NCAA March Madness brackets on the Crunch Time Network, I probably am going to finish number 20 out of 20.
Well, I will say this.
You got to pull those stats up later, by the way.
I had 3 out of 4 of my Final Four in the Big Ten.
See, that's the thing. I mean, you listen to all So let me say to this: do sports writers and all these people that are doing these brackets know what the f they're talking about? Because here, like, we've been fed all this cockamamie crap about COVID-19, whether you like it or not. Stay in your house, don't stay in your house, order takeout, stay away from your friends, all the other shenanigans about bubble sports. And here's another spoon feeding of crap when it comes down to these insiders of what they're telling us who to bet for and who to pick and who not to pick. I mean, if you looked at my bracket, I'll be honest with you. I picked favorites because, I picked favorites in terms of what teams I liked, what teams I wanted to win from the heart. I didn't study a damn schedule. I didn't study who was this and who was that. The little eye with the circled information on the rosters and win-loss and strength of schedule, I threw that all out of the window. I mean, I didn't even put barbecue sauce on it. I just threw it out for the birds. The bottom line was I just picked who I picked, and I spent maybe 7 minutes on my whole bracket. And maybe that's why I'll finish dead last. But you know what? I had fun for 7 minutes. I thought North Carolina would do a whole lot better than Wisconsin. I thought Michigan State was going to beat UCLA. I do not like USC, so I didn't even put them in the Sweet 16. As much as I'm a Notre Dame fan, I had to take Michigan because Notre Dame wasn't even in the 68. That's what I did. There it was.
Did you do any digging before you did your bracket?
I dug my grave. I dug my crapper line to see where it was leaking. What else did I dig? I dug a little hole for my goldfish that passed away. I didn't do any digging. What am I going to dig for? Is there money on the line? No. I was so out of it this week, Joe. I put a 6-game parlay up in our Canadian betting scene called Sports Select. And I had 4 ties and 2 wins. And one of the ties I had was a wrong game. And it ended up being a win. You know what my $2 ticket was going to pay out? $5,500. You know what? You know who screwed me? Baylor. Because they flat out won. Shucks. Should have picked 5 games, right? Stupid Theo. That's what kind of weekend I've had.
Oh my God!
It's been one of those weekends. You look at what's going on. I'm like, you could have. Okay, you're gonna take Abilene. Okay, how about let's take Oral Roberts? Yeah, okay, right on. Yeah. Can you bet against the nun? Never. Loyola Chicago has proved that correct 2 tournaments in a row now that they've been there. They've been to the Sweet 16 back to back. Maybe they'll go to the Final Four. I don't know. They've got God on their side. I'm not saying that facetiously. That's legit, But the Pac-12 is the most surprising part of it. UCLA, USC, Oregon. I mean, where do these teams come from? And then you throw BYU was a bit of an upset. I'm kind of upset with them because they took Gonzaga to the finals in their championship game pretty deep. But Gonzaga has just maybe proved that they're that good of a team. What are the odds of them finishing the tournament number 1 and winning the whole thing now? They got to be a whole lot better than they were compared to when 68 teams were kicking around. But, I mean, Gonzaga looks good. They look good today. I was kind of surprised. Drew Timme is the real deal. Luka Garza showed me that he is not the real deal in ways. I mean, he's got growth. He needs growth.
Okay, he had 36 points today and they lost.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, that shows growth in the terms of, yes, you can put him on. You can put a team on his back so he can score 36, but where's the supporting cast? Same thing happened to Oklahoma State with our number 1 pick supposedly last night. I mean, what do you have, 21 or 24 points?
Mm-hmm.
And they're booted by Oregon State. Oregon State, the Beavers, took out the number 1 potential NBA draft pick this year in this year's draft. Dude Cunningham. Is that his name?
Mm-hmm.
See ya. Does he care, though? Nah. He's got his 1 year. He's one and done. He'll be fine. The rest of the team is going to be an issue because they still got to worry about their education. But not Cunningham. He's fine. He's good.
What about Mizzou? this team was planning to go far. And at least they had a team that they could go far.
You know
Problem is, they were 3-7 in their last 10 games before going to the tournament.
Going in lukewarm does not mean going in hot. I mean, the Illini and the Ohio State Buckeyes were a whole lot hotter, and they didn't fare off too well either.
This is a Mizzou team that we maybe would think we'd see just because they've had a track record of they have all these good. They started off 13-3, and to go 3-7 in your last 10 before you get to the tournament. Yeah, you're not going to do so hot. You're not going to do so well. But I thought maybe they'd beat Oklahoma. I knew they'd probably get their butts kicked against Gonzaga if they got past Oklahoma. But losing to Oklahoma, it just didn't seem like they cared. And they were taking too many contested shots. When you're taking that many contested shots without like working the ball around, Wags and I were talking about this today on the podcast. I don't know if you got to see it, but basically what he said, if you like take all of these shots and not work it around, you're one-dimensional. If you have one guy in the paint surrounded by three of the other team's players, yeah, that's not going to work out so well. You're not going to get too many rebounds. So, go ahead.
You got teams that rely on the three ball. You've got teams. This is the one thing that I will agree with the guys that are calling the game. And, halftime shows with Kellogg and, Charles and them. When they say to a team that a team needs to attack the rim, get inside, get in the key, continue to force that play, and then you see the team do exactly the opposite, settling for 15-foot jumpers, 18-foot jumpers, going 1 for 8 behind the arc kind of stuff. I mean, last night's game, I'm going to use the Cunningham and the Oklahoma State Cowboys losing by 10 to the Oregon State Beavers because the Cowboys, if you watch the second half, that first 10 minutes of that second half, they were within 4 points. All they had to do was keep rim rocking, going to the net, going to the key. They had the big guys. Cunningham was hitting the open shots when they were kicking it back to him. But what do? All four of the 5 players start settling for shots, and they weren't making them. And that's exactly what the commentator said you don't want to do. I felt bad for the Cowboys. I really did. I mean, it could have been one of those games where they could have come back from a 11-point, deficit, and they could have squeaked the game out. Kudos to Loyola Chicago, though. I mean, you got to give those guys credit. I was talking to my brother last night when they were playing, and I said, if there's about 8 or 9 minutes left, and I said, if they can go trip down versus trip down against who they were playing, and I forget who they were playing. Oh, they were playing Illinois, because Mike Wilbaum will be upset and happy at the same time because Loyola is going to win or Illinois is going to win. But Illinois went trip for trip with Loyola Chicago in the last 9 minutes. But the thing was, Loyola Chicago already had an 11-point lead with 9 minutes left. So Illinois couldn't really muster up a massive run to take that deficit out. So kudos to Chicago. They were good. I like them.
They were really good. Well, I'm going to let's go to the scoreboard here. You had Oregon beating Iowa 95-80. That was another upset in a tournament full of upsets. You have number 11 UCLA taking out number 14 Abilene Christian 67-47. You had Michigan beating LSU 86-78. Oklahoma loses to number 1 Gonzaga 87-71. Creighton moves on. They beat Ohio 72-58. Colorado loses to Florida State by a final of 71-53. And the 2 games going on right now with 12 and a half minutes to go in the second half. You got Maryland and Alabama. Alabama's winning this one 65-47. Safe to say that game could be over. And USC and Kansas, this is the game of the night in my mind. It's 15-10 with 8:49, at least what I'm reading, 8:49 left in the first half. So
Who's winning that? Kansas or USC?
No, it's USC 15-10.
Yeah. Yuck.
You don't like USC, do you?
I'm a Notre Dame fan. Wear Kelly green and gold in USC country in Southern California, and you can sing several songs. You could sing Elton John's "Can You Feel the Love Tonight," or you can sing Maroon 5, "You Will Be Loved," and you will be in a little bit of trouble walking the streets of Southern California in Notre Dame colors. I've done it. It's not very nice.
Yeah,
I'll leave it there.
I can tell it wouldn't be. But when we come back, we're going to be talking some NHL. So stick with us right here on Crunch Time. Welcome back to Crunch Time here on ASTV Productions. I am Joe Hamilton alongside Theo. Let's get into some hockey, man. The Blues are back in action tonight, and Robert Thomas is back. Robert Thomas and Zach Sanford, who had a false positive COVID test, which I've seen that a lot lately, which I'll get with you with that in a second. But let's get to our main man, Theo, and talk to him about the North Division, first of all, because there has been a changing of the guard, at least right now. So let's throw it over to you.
I don't know if it's a changing of the guard. I think it's who's finishing second, third, and fourth that's kind of intriguing because, changing the guard, sure. I mean, right now you've got Toronto and Edmonton sitting at top 42, and you've got Winnipeg sitting in third, and then Montreal 4, 38 and 37 respectively. Both with the same number of games played, having games in hand on both Edmonton and Toronto. And then you've got Vancouver that's won 2 in a row now here, sitting in fifth, while Calgary and Ottawa sit a little bit lower. Having that said, this is the first time in the Northern Division that Winnipeg has now lost 2 games in a row, both to Edmonton. Usually when it comes to back-to-back games or when they lose a game, they always come back and rebound to win the next. Edmonton proved that otherwise. So this will be a fun game to see how Winnipeg bounces up to play in Vancouver against the Canucks, who are playing fantastic goaltender hockey. I mean, Thatcher Demko is literally on fire. Like, the guy is, I think his save percentage is above .950. He's 8-1 in his last 9. Truly outdoing Braden Holtby and keeping the Canucks in a playoff contention while their forwards decide how to shoot and score. Edmonton has just lit the lamp on Winnipeg the last 2 nights, doing what they had to do best. And Toronto is dealing with a bit of an injury bug. And, I mean, they've had 2 of their players, Travis Boyd and Jimmy Vesey, both picked up by the Canucks. So they're unloading some mini salaries maybe to make a potential move come the deadline. So watch what happens here in the next week. The key issue, though, is I don't see a Northern team changing their lineup with another Northern Division team. So you're going to have quarantine time. You're going to have days where they have players in quarantine. And whether they move south or north of the border, will they benefit that team in the home stretch? Probably not as much as we think. Mind you, we are 3 weeks away from a deadline, April 12th. So I think trades are going to happen now versus at the deadline. That's my Northern Division look at.
That's your Northern Division look at. And are you at all positive about maybe Winnipeg taking the North? I mean, Toronto, they're still there, but they've been streaky as of late.
You know what? Right now, it's that they're 31 to 33 games in. This is like just after that halfway point. This is the difficult part of the season for the Jets. I think they're playing the next, 14 of the next 17 on the road, or 14 of the next 18 on the road. So it's not a lot of home games. Mind you, they're a better they're above 500 in both aspects. I think this is just going to be one of those parts of the season where it wears on a lot of teams. The good thing for the Jets is they are built solid top to bottom. Like their front 12 forwards. I mean, Paul Maurice has explained it that his top forward line should be getting less than 20 minutes a game, and his fourth line should be rocking between 8 and 10. If he can do that, that's a great balance of 12 forwards. His defense, I mean, you still got Morrissey running at around 22, 23, Pionk at the same, and the rest dwindle down to less than around 16 minutes a game. So, I mean, you've got balance on the front end, you got balance on the back end. You see Laurent Brossoit play a couple of these games to keep Hellebuck fresh. I think it's just one of those things that we have to pray to the injury gods that nobody gets injured.
Yeah, that's for sure. And Connor Hellebuck, man, he's starting to find it. He's starting to find his Vezina form, and it's coming at the right time, really, because these are the games where you're going to need him. And Laurent Brossoit, I mean, if you have two good goaltenders, you got to have a 1A, 1B, and you can't have a clear-cut number one anymore. Yes, some teams can do it, like Vegas. I mean, Vegas has clear-cut number one in Marc-Andre Fleury. But if you don't have, in my mind, on most teams, a 1A and a 1B, you're just not going to succeed in the NHL. That's damn obvious.
Like when you look at it, you've got less than 30 games left in the season, 25 almost. This is where you got to ride out and say, okay, you really have to have a good strategic goaltending strategy schedule set up. And you can't just be at the eeny, meeny, miny, mo gods and pick one 20 minutes before the game starts.
Yeah, you cannot do that. Well, the St. Louis Blues, I talk about them a lot, and for obvious reasons, but they have I talk about their depth all the time about where is it, but if you realize it, the Blues have had so many injuries. There was a tweet that came out from Chris Kerber, the Blues radio voice, earlier this week. With all the guys injured, the Blues are still in a playoff spot with 26 to go. And that just tells you how their depth is, but that also tells you how weak this West Division really is. Outside of, maybe Minnesota, but the clear-cut three, you have Vegas, St. Louis, and Colorado. Outside of that, none of the California teams are giving you any sort of fight. The Blues only have one regulation loss in California. They're 8-1-2 against teams from California in California.
Yeah, no, and you know what? You're absolutely right. The one team out of California I would be worried about is Los Angeles because they are playing really good hockey right now. Anze Kopitar is playing like he's 27 years old, and Drew Doughty's logging minutes. They may be making some moves before the deadline as well. I mean, I don't see them making a big splash, but I mean, they've been saying they want to find that young mid-20-year-old defenseman to kind of shore up some of those mistakes that are happening along the blue line. And I could see Jonathan Quick kind of finding a resurgence and saying, hey, you know what? Let's make the playoffs and see what happens.
Yeah, let's make the play. Isn't that in every sport, though, Theo?
Not
make
really.
the playoffs. Make the playoffs and anything can happen.
We don't talk much basketball. And, I've been watching a little bit of NBA only because of the political matters and some of the things that are happening off the court as well. And I'm going to coin this season maybe the crybaby season because I find that, if an all-star cries wolf that they want to go play somewhere, why would I trade him to that team? If they really had amazing assets, then maybe. But, I mean, you look at the East and how they're built, and you look at the West, how they're built. There are teams, it's going to be a lot more parity than people think. I think in the end you're going to have two really big juggernaut teams playing in the finals. But without the moves that they made, the transactions they had, and the opportunity to stay healthy, we may not see those best teams. Mark my words, everyone's taking the Nets and the Lakers to be in the finals. Well, LeBron's injured right now. And last time I checked, his running mate, AD, is injured. And if you look at the Nets, I don't see Kevin Durant in the lineup for the last 3 weeks. James Harden's playing MVP ball.
Kyrie Irving is not traveling on their next trip because apparently he has another family issue.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying he doesn't, but doesn't it seem like from what I've been reading, like every third road trip, he has to tend to a family issue.
And you know what? The Brooklyn Nets can favor themselves because James Harden is playing lights out, I'm in shape basketball. Like James Harden is probably the best player in the last 5 years.
Yeah, James Harden is basically telling people to shut the hell up after all the fat jokes, after everything else. He's just been unbelievable lately, and kudos to him. Now, one thing you got to pay attention to, and I don't know if you've paid attention enough when it came to the NBA, is a team in the Utah Jazz. The Utah Jazz are a team now that the Lakers are merely an afterthought because of not having AD and LeBron. That team in Utah, watch out for that team. That's going to be a big team to watch in the playoffs. I will tell you that for sure.
Yeah, no, I like them. I think I'm kind of surprised that Denver's not playing as well as they should. And again, it's going to come down to which teams are going to be healthier come the end of the regular season. It's going to battle down to, these big stars taking time off. I mean, yeah, LeBron would be he'd be wanting on the court. He doesn't want to fake an injury. But this could be the silver lining to having AD and LeBron out of the lineup right now because you get to see the context and the grit that supporting cast in Los Angeles has. I would really like to see Phoenix make a run for this, but I don't think they're going to do it. As much as I'd like to see the Knicks make the 8th spot, I mean, they haven't had this good of a season in almost a decade. They haven't been above 500 since 2010, last time I looked during the regular season at this point in the season. What's going on in Boston, I have no clue. I mean, the Celtics look like an absolute Buffalo Sabre-like scenario. They just look all over sorts.
Man, and that's sad too because at least I thought that would be a team you'd have to watch out for a very long time because you got a young gun in Jason Tatum, and that build around him, you're good usually. But I wanted to go back to Brooklyn because there's one guy that you didn't bring up in Brooklyn that interests me a little bit. He's starting to learn his way to dunk again, and that is Mr. Blake Griffin. Blake Griffin could become huge for this team. Do you agree with that?
Well, he's that, he's not the big scorer that he used to be. He's not expected to put up 28 a game. He's a little bit older, a little more mature. He did play in Detroit, so he's got a little more of that grit, more of that Rick Mahorn, elbowish kind of play from the late 90s, early 90s. That's made him mature. And I think that is what's missing from the Brooklyn Nets is that inside presence. Kevin Durant's not going to play inside the key. Harden and Kyrie are going to slash and shoot. When they had to trade away that key piece in the Harden deal, I'm trying to remember what his name was, LeVert. When LeVert left, that was a big piece that Brooklyn gave up. But I think they've replaced it with Blake Griffin.
Yeah.
I like the pickup.
I do too. But while we can get carried away with that, let's talk some baseball next here on Crunch Time. Welcome back to Crunch Time here on ASTV Productions. It's getting close, my man. Baseball season is upon us. Let's go to Toronto first, or at least let's stay in Dunedin because we're going to be staying in Dunedin. Oh, I like what you're doing there. But,
Griffey.
Griffey.
Trout.
Mm-hmm.
And I like fish. And then below my name, I've got my Yankees, Mickey and Babe.
Yeah.
Need in Florida, home of the Blue Jays. Rogers doesn't like that, and that's totally fine. That's blame the Canadian government for that. I think that's an absolute disgrace now that you've got a baseball team that's playing the second full season in the States. The Blue Jays, I mean, bats. They don't have that pitching staff. They got young guys. They got some guys that are throwing the ball. But like you said, in like a week's time, regular season starts, man.
Regular season starts, and I still don't know if I trust the Blue Jay pitching. If you remember me talking to you when we did this show a few months ago, that I had the Blue Jays winning the East last year. They came close to doing that. They actually came close to being a legit contender to the Yankees. And the Yankees didn't have the good pitching. I mean, you saw how bad the Red Sox were. This is maybe a clear-cut opportunity for Toronto to.
You know what? You look at the like you said, you look at the Blue Jays and look at what they've built, and they've built excitement. They built young. They're built around their youngsters. They picked up some pieces. Springer's a huge piece. I mean, look for him to prove dividends. I really feel he's going to be that guy that's going to bolt 25, 30 dingers, 100 ribbies. It's going to provide that offensive spark they haven't had since Josh Donaldson and Joey Bats. But having that said, we saw, like you said, the big three, Biggio, Bichette, and I mean, Vlad Jr. Vlad Jr. is my X factor. Because here's a guy that goes into the home run derby last year and goes yard deep way too many times. And since then, his stroke hasn't been his stroke. Comes into camp like 40 pounds lighter this year. I don't know if it's 40 pounds, but he looks a lot faster. He looks a little more agile and hostile. Looks more like his dad. You know, and that's the scary part because we know how good Vlad the Impaler was with the Angels. You know,
your Angels, mind you.
My Angels. My Expos. The guy was lethal. I mean, they tried to bounce the ball in front of home plate, and he still hit it 400 feet. Like, it was insane. And Vlad Jr.'s got that same bat. The offense was there. The defense around the horn's going to be good. But, yeah, that pitching, I mean, I don't understand the philosophy on the pitching. I'm surprised no one's really asked how they're going to administer 12 pitches on the mound. If they're going to do pitch counts of 50 per, if they're going to have 3 starters and the fourth is going to be a bastardized start, I don't know. But I guess we'll find out in the coming weeks because that's when the games start counting.
Yeah, and I'm excited for this season because, I mean, the Dodgers and Padres are going to be fun baseball games to watch all year. I'm sure you'll be locked onto those when you can. I mean, you're going to have of course, the Yankees and Red Sox. The Yankees, in my mind, I know you can't stand the Yankees being a Blue Jay fan. I mean, that's Blue Jays are your team.
2 Yankees behind me, man.
Well, obviously, but I'm saying the Blue Jays and I mean, they're in the same division, so you want to see the Yankees go down. But they have that otherworldly offense. They play in a bandbox known as Yankee Stadium. I don't care what anybody says. Wags tried to argue that with me earlier, but Yankee Stadium, in my mind, is a bandbox. Is it not? This new Yankee Stadium, I should say.
It's a shrine. I mean, it's not the old stadium, no doubt, but it's one of those things, if you have a chance to get to New York City and you get a chance to go to the Bronx and check out Yankee Stadium, go. I mean, put that on your list. Worth it. And you know what? They got bombers. They got 2 bombers. You know, when the judge is out, Stanton and the jury will step right in. And that's only 2 of them.
That's another problem, though. Stanton is always hurt, too.
Yeah.
Or, you know, so those guys, I always feel like those guys are too big to be ball players. They look like they should be tight end in the NFL material.
It's funny when you say that because, you know, you think of the duration of a season, 162 games, and they're picking a sport that is supposed to be more safe on the body, right? Not supposed to be as physically taxing as playing tight end. But we're finding out that baseball players are getting injured just as much as tight ends or just as much as hockey players are. And it's not a physical sport, but it's the longevity of it of a season is what hurts a baseball player. And it's hard to see these big guys, play a full 162. None of them rarely do that anymore. Like you're never going to see Cal Ripken's. I will put money on it. You will never see Cal Ripken's record of consecutive games ever beaten. You've heard it.
Yeah. You won't see that beaten ever again. That's for sure. We talk about the Blue Jays, talk about the Yankees. There's a team in Baltimore that, since I want to stick in your division, there's a team in Baltimore that is building something. And that could be fun to watch over the next few years because they got Anthony Santander. They have the one thing about the Baltimore Orioles that I don't think they're developing right is pitching. And it seems like in the American League East in general, pitching is an afterthought. Am I wrong on that?
Before we get to that comment, I don't think Baltimore is building anything. I think Baltimore is still going to finish in the bottom.
No, they're going to finish in the bottom, but you do got to like some of the young players, even though it's growing pains and everything else.
I like going to Philadelphia and having a cheesesteak. Doesn't mean I have to go like the Eagles.
I mean, come on.
I like watching a good Donnybrook, but it doesn't mean I'm going to go see one when the Penguins are playing the Flyers. And I don't have to go to Baltimore and enjoy watching Oriole baseball. I'd rather skip out and go to Adams Morgan and Morgan's Adams and maybe watch some Georgetown basketball and see if the Hoyas and Mr. Patrick Ewing gets recognized in his own building as opposed to MSG.
Oh gosh, that's.
I don't believe the Orioles are. I think the Orioles are 2 to 3 seasons away from doing anything. But to talk about your pitching, yes. I mean, you talk about a philosophy of an entire division that says we have to outdo this team, and the only way we can do that is with hitting. Well, Yankees have shown that. The Red Sox have shown that. The Tampa Bay Rays are the only team that's really not shown that because their pitching has gotten them further than the Yankees and Red Sox combined in the last 2 seasons, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So just goes to show you don't need all the millions in the bats. You need a team that's going to surprise the heck out of the other team and start throwing balls at you that are like, wait a second, that passed me again? I'm going 0 for 3 against Tampa Bay, and we're losing this game?
The one thing that Tampa, it baffles me what they gave up Charlie Morton. They let him go, and they let Blake Snell go. But hey, you got Chris Archer back. But what Chris Archer are you going to have? Are you going to have the early Chris Archer in Tampa?
No.
Or are you going to have the Chris Archer that was in Pittsburgh? The pardon my French, the shitty Chris Archer. I mean,
well, you're gonna have Tampa Bay retirement home Chris Archer.
Tampa Bay retirement home Chris Archer.
You've got, I mean, in the years of salaries, the big thing is you can make whatever he's making. He's making $6 or $8 million this year. 2 words: tax free. Go to New York, not tax free. Pittsburgh, any other state, not tax free. So when you want to end a career, you want to finish out your career with making as much money as you can. Hey, Tom Brady did it. Why can't Chris Archer do it?
Yeah, why can't Chris Archer do it? But he went to the wrong team to try to make that money because Tampa doesn't pay anybody.
Well, he's getting paid pretty good in his own mind. I mean, was Pittsburgh going to offer him $6 million, $8 million bucks for the year? Probably not.
Well, he ain't worth that. At most, maybe 2 to 3 or 5 to 7 million. He's worth.
Well,
I mean, do you agree or not?
Tampa will find out. He could have played for the Dunedin Blue Jays. That's kind of interesting though, because they're playing in Toronto, they're playing in Dunedin this year, or in Buffalo. How does that work in a tax bracket? Because the team's registered in Toronto. Do they get paid and have to be taxed in Canadian funds, or are they getting paid Florida money and not getting taxed at all? That's a question we should find out from Blue Jays people.
Yeah, that's a really good question to really think about. But
I mean, Springer wants to know, because if he's only losing none of his check, great. But if he's losing 40% of his check by playing for a team up north, that's got to suck.
Come on, he's getting paid $160 million. If you even 40% of that, you're still going to be paid handsomely. So I don't.
I'm just saying.
But why? But how is that a complaint point? Because you're still making millions of dollars. You knew that going in. Well, you knew either way, or you knew one way you were going to get taxed, or another way you were going to get taxed.
It handcuffs.
But what was the tax bracket like in Buffalo? What was it like in Buffalo last year?
Well, it's all New York State. New York State's. I mean, New York State tax. I don't know what it is. We'll have to look for it the next show. But you've got New York. You've got Buffalo. You've got. I think that's all the other teams in baseball. But is there any baseball teams in New York City? New York State?
No, Mets, Yankees. There's none in Buffalo. That was just
there's no upstate New York teams. Yeah. So I mean, but the thing is, you look at you'd have to look at other sports and see what the tax bracket is. But like when you look at high end athletes, like look at Mike Trout. He's getting paid second highest paid player in Major League Baseball. That's the highest paid player position wise outside of being a pitcher. And you couldn't sign him to that money in Toronto. You couldn't.
Look at what Lindor what could Lindor potentially make? Well, Lester chimes in before I get to that point.
Yeah.
Lester chimes in. I wouldn't want to lose 40% of my income no matter what I made.
I'd like to see 100% of my income no matter when it shows up. If it shows up, wink. But it's not going to show up. But the bottom line is, it's one of those things that you say, hey, you know what? The dotted line says $160 million over 4 years. Wait a second, I'm playing in Florida. I'm not playing in Canada. Even though the team's registered in Canada, why am I? Where's the bracket on this? And I think that could be. I don't know if that was a sticky point, but you know what? Like, I'm just saying. And I know so. I mean, back before you were born, Joe, we'll switch to football here in a good old Canadian Football League. We haven't talked about this in the XFL. We won't talk about it tonight. But there used to be a player that played for Notre Dame called the Rocket, Raheem Ismail. He was graduating after Tim Brown, the late 80s, early 90s. In 92, he signs with the Toronto Argonauts for a $25 million contract. Thought it was the greatest deal ever. But the problem was Canada took 50% of his taxes. So he really was making like $13, $14 million without endorsements.
And people were acting like that's a big deal. You're making millions of dollars. Stop.
But when he could have been making double that in in the NFL.
But here's the thing, though. I know the Canadian dollar is not as strong in Canada, or the Canadian dollar is not as strong. But still, $13 million is $13 million.
Hey, if someone were to hand me for me to go run a football and I could run a football really well, sure, I'd be fine.
Yeah, I'd be fine.
I'm not saying, but I'd like to make as much, and I agree with Lester, I'd like to make as much money as I can without giving it to the tax man.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. Now let's talk about football, not just the NFL, football in general, because I want to know more about this XFL, CFL potential merger. I don't know, but we'll be back right after this.
Theo here on ASTV. Check out my show Tuesdays and Thursdays, 6 p.m. on the ice. Me and my guests break down all of the hottest and latest topics surrounding the world of hockey. You do that every time.
Every time that I will play that when you're on. That is sure. Hey, it's advertisement. I gotta do it every time because you're on this show. So
I gotta switch the background then from now on. I can't do the same background. I gotta flip the switch. The flick of the switch, ACDC style.
Yeah, but I mean that background is fine. But let's talk about this XFL, CFL stuff because Rod Peterson's been talking about this a lot lately.
Yeah.
And I don't know rather if I'm happy about it or if this could potentially damage both leagues. Talk about this.
Okay, well, it's not going to damage the XFL because the XFL has been absolutely a total debauchery since its inception.
Well,
now,
you know why? You know why? Because Vinnie Mac owned them. Vinnie Mac was an idiot.
Well, Vinnie Mac walked on to Las Vegas and said, "This is the XFL." And Tommy Maddox had a great career in the NFL because of the XFL. And the best thing about the XFL was the nicknames on the back of the jerseys. Don't
He hate me.
He hate me. Exactly. Everyone knows about he hate me. So the bottom line is the XFL has a rebrand, a revamp with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and his investors. And they bought it for dirt cheap, 100 or something like 15 million bucks. That's it. The problem is you look at the CFL as being Canada's pastime to 3-down football. Our balls are bigger. Our field is wider, yada, yada, yada. Has the game gotten boring? I don't know. The bottom line is, like all Canadian sports, unless you've got a fantastic product on the surface, it is not supported. Don't naysay me. Don't whatever. All you Canadians, just fact of the matter is, if you were to support your football program in your town or your city, and you had a team, you do it a whole lot better knowing that you had a great team and a good product on the field. Unlike when you go to any college football game on a Saturday in the States and you see license plates from all over the United States watching their alma mater play another team, and they may get the crap beaten out of them. They may have a close game, but I can well tell every Canadian out there, all the fields I've gone to on a Saturday in the States have been more supported by any single game down there than all the games I've ever seen in the CFL. The only game that has been more supported in the CFL has maybe been the Grey Cup in '93 when Rocket Ismail almost got nailed with a beer can against the Calgary Stampeders in Winnipeg in minus 38 degrees, where the Safeway Fun Zone had more liquor in it than the S section. The S section is known as the snake section, where they take all the empty beer cans and make a snake out of it from row 1 to row 35.
That's
and
awesome.
it's kind of funny.
Awesome.
Yeah, like if you see the
sounds
pictures
like
on
a
that
college
show,
atmosphere. It sounds like
but that is Canada football. Okay, the problem is Canada football hasn't been branded the way it needs to be. And does it need a facelift? Is it dead in the water?
It's dead in the water. At least unless.
So in the eyes of some people, yes. I mean, Gary Lawless has come in and said there needs to be a major revamping. He's followed CFL for decades. Rod Peterson has said pretty much the same thing too. Mark me if I'm wrong, right, Joe?
Yeah.
So two pretty good personalities in Canada sports, not on major TV networks anymore in Canada, that could say that the proof is in the pudding. And it is. Markets are shrinking. Dollars are shrinking. Fan support is shrinking. That is just the truth. But how do we revamp it? Well, like I said to you about a month ago, where's the partnership between the CFL and the NFL? There isn't one, or it's a very loose one that doesn't profit the CFL whatsoever.
Yeah, but no one talks about it if there is. And you'd think there'd be a little bit of talk about it.
So here's where the talk comes in. You've got an exciting person, a image in The Rock, looking to promote and rebrand the XFL. Well, why not do it north and south of the border? And there's been more than preliminary talks, I think, in the last several months before the merger even happened, this relationship. And we're talking about not just Canadian teams, but a Canadian and an American division, upwards of 18 teams, potential 4-down football, making this extremely exciting for not just the fans, but for the players, because this is something that Mike Stackhouse and I have talked about in great detail, the opportunity for players that are just not on the cusp of making a practice roster, or getting cut from an NFL team, playing in a division like an XFL, CFL, that could get you back into the NFL a lot quicker than as opposed to playing in just the CFL or just the XFL. Well, that, I think, is the reason why they want this merger to occur.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. But the thing is, why hasn't it? How long will this take for this to happen? If it does happen, at this point, the CFL I feel like they would have had to play this season, or they'd have to close up shop. They would have been done. Football in Canada would have been done if they wouldn't have played. Now the XFL shows up, and they could postpone this season too, only to maybe rebrand, not rebrand, but kind of rebrand in a sense.
It is a rebrand because it's a refresh. You're hitting the refresh button, and you're doing that because the silver lining perhaps is now, okay, we don't have certain things that we thought we had, or they're not as good as we thought they were. Now we have this opportunity to rebuild this relationship. Now we have to decide, do we wait? Do we proceed? Do we make an announcement? That is what the next moving piece is going to be. Right now, the CFL teams are signing players in the position thinking that there is going to be a season this year. There is a schedule out. They have, tryouts and dates set up for most of the teams, I believe, and they're working to fulfill rosters for June. We'll see what happens.
I don't know, man. I really don't know. I mean, watching Rod Peterson, he doesn't seem too not enthused, but he doesn't seem too positive about it even happening. But he says they have to play in order to stay in business. Do you agree with that?
Well, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, CFL teams rely on ticket revenue. Like gate revenue is what they rely on. And there's no handouts to CFL teams from any upper political groups. There's no government handouts. TV contracts are very small compared, they're a bucket drop to the NFL. So there needs to be a revamp. There needs to be a refresh to this. What can you provide to an audience? It's funny because I had this conversation with a different sport. Because sports have been gone for so long in Canada here, to have a Canadian Football League season roll out this year mediocrely would be a detriment, and it would kill the CFL because the players are not auditioning for their own positions. They are auditioning for the fans and the organizations they represent. Because if they don't put their hearts out on the field, fans will see that it is fake and it's not worth it, and they will stop showing and will stop supporting. That is why gate support and fans are a necessity to live sports in Canada. If you show and they see that it's not benefiting the fan, they will stop.
Yeah, period. I happen to agree with you. The sad part is, I mean, the XFL season could be postponed too. Just this could be a year or a couple of years thing. Where
I mean, if they postpone this year, then they start 22, 23.
Yeah,
I don't think there's a problem with that. I mean, you talk about I don't think teams will fold, but it'll give them a chance to have that resurgence, that replan of attack, that renaissance, if you will, because they're going to have to roll out a different business plan. They're going to be putting together different TV deals. There's going to be different forms of revenue. There's going to be revenue sharing, I'm sure, revenue cost analysis. It's going to benefit North and South. I mean, they wouldn't be doing this if they didn't see the positives outweighing the negatives. You don't go into a business venture when negatives outdo the positives. It doesn't make sense. That's how people go bankrupt. This is not a hobby anymore. This is a game plan for the investors involved.
Yeah, it really is. Now, going to the NFL, it was announced today that the NFL draft will be close to normal. It will be held in Cleveland. All the big time players will be there. There will be all the rest of the players that will be drafted will be seen via, I guess, video. So, your response to this, and do you think it's too soon? I mean, they're thinking about doing this outside.
Do it. April 29th to May 1st, do it. I mean, we are, as fans, we want to see it done. Look what's happening at spring break. Beaches are packed. There's nothing being protected whatsoever.
There's a curfew in Miami right now because of that.
Go to Corpus Christi, Texas. It's chaos.
Well, Texas, they have no lockdown, no mask mandate, nothing. So yeah,
what's the? I mean, in a month's time, all these players are probably going to be better protected, vaccinated, whatever they're going to do. There's going to be protocols in place. I mean, people are going to be safe. If they're not well, they're not going to travel. It'll be totally understandable. But the NFL wants to put this back on the stage. The NFL draft is for two people: the fans and the players getting drafted. That's who it's for. Like, the excitement was missed all last draft. You didn't see any roars, any cheers, any boos.
You didn't see any boos for Roger Goodell.
Goodell was so happy sitting in his basement, his lair, his man cave, holding a ball and saying who got drafted. You want to know why? Because he didn't have to hear a single flipping boo. The only boo he heard was because he burnt the microwave popcorn in the upper kitchen area, and he couldn't make another one because he had to wait for a commercial. Boo. Bottom line was, he didn't care. At the same time, he did care because he realizes it's for the fans. Just like Gary Bettman, just like Bud Selig, every time they got booed,
Bud Selig, I don't think he's gotten booed as much as Rob Manfred, but that's another story.
So yeah. Bettman and Goodell love getting booed because you know what that tells me? That tells me they're doing something right. And it's true.
I mean, you got the TV deal coming up in the NHL. You have a new CBA in the NHL. I mean, the NHL's done everything right. Now, will Major League Baseball do what's right? That's going to be another issue for another day.
Yeah.
Before we get out of here tonight, I failed to read the NBA scores. I might as well go through those now. New Orleans with a 113-108 win over Denver. You have the Toronto Raptors, they lost tonight to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Ouch. 116-105. You have Brooklyn beating Washington 113-106. You have the Lakers getting killed by Phoenix 111-94. You have, well, that was weird. I read Cleveland score from yesterday, but still that's warranted because it is Toronto. But Sacramento beat Cleveland 119-105. You have the Orlando Magic losing to the Boston Celtics 112-96. You have the Chicago Bulls beating the Detroit Pistons by a score of 100-86. The Philadelphia 76ers eke out a win 101-100 against the New York Knicks. Dallas and Portland. Dallas absolutely murdered Portland by a final of 132-92. Ouch. And another final today, Oklahoma City over the Minnesota Timberwolves, 112-103. 2 games going on right now. You have Charlotte and San Antonio. Charlotte is up by a point with 1:40 to go, 93-92. And then you have, wow, I read the Boston score from yesterday. Sorry, guys, it's just been a long day. Boston and Memphis in action with 7:12 left in the fourth. You have the Memphis Grizzlies up 104-96. So, wow. The NBA, it's just about to get fun, isn't it?
Well, I mean, I like the Knicks. I like what they've done. I mean,
wow, I can't believe I've ever could
Thibodeau. I like Thibodeau. I mean, I like what he's done there. I mean, Randall's playing ball. Lobby Toppin's playing ball when he gets the minutes. RJ Barrett, I think, is coming into his skin. That whole Eastern Division. I mean, there's 7 teams there that finish 1 through 7, 1 through 8 even. I mean, it all depends on who's going to be extremely warm, extremely good come the end of the season. It's getting exciting. I really want to. What I really want to see of the East is I want to see those big 3 out of Brooklyn play again together, healthy on the floor.
Yeah, me too. You know? It's been a great show. Sorry to cut you off, Theo, but we're out of time. So for Theo, I'm Joe Hamilton. Thank you guys for watching tonight. Again, we will see you guys tomorrow. Be safe, everyone. Oh, wow.